This is a real blast from the past for me, standing in the Vaughan Jeffrey, thinking about the number of times I would have stood here with Penny doing distance weekends. It's very tricky actually doing this, because you're kind of trying to predict what people will say and try and come at something differently. My starting point for thinking about this was kind of twofold. Penny and I did a great deal of teaching together, quite often evening teaching, so 5 to 8 o'clock, and we did a kind of double act, which was great, kept us going. You know, that kind of 7:30 slot where, you know, everybody is starting to flag. Well, actually working with Penny and her ability to bounce, to be unfailingly cheerful and enthusiastic, was a real, she was a real treasure. One of the interesting things about planning those sessions with her is that we came at it from slightly different perspectives. So her starting point, actually, as Graham has kind of alluded to, is, right, what do we want students to do? And my starting point was about, well, what do we want them to know? And I actually think that those two things came together, which kind of underpin what I've picked out to pass on today, which is putting meaning first. Yes? So you can know an enormous amount, but actually, what does it all mean? So following on from Jean, it's the second M. Yes. What I thought I'd put that in the context of is some work that Penny and I did quite a while ago now around challenging behaviour. At that time, it was very much seen as something that was actually the prime job of the teacher should be to get rid of it. Yeah, extinguish it as fast as possible. Yeah. But the stance that we took was very much about trying to understand that behaviour, to see what the meaning of it was, what the purpose of it was. Actually, that it's not simply something to be extinguished, it's something that tells you quite a lot about an individual's needs. And I think it was quite timely in a way that we were doing that. We did some surveys of staff, and actually the levels of stress that staff were experiencing because they didn't know how to think about a child with challenging behaviour, it made their day or not made their day according to how the child responded. Like everybody else, I've kind of picked out some key themes, which actually, for anybody that did it, I noticed it used to be called EDC 45. It's now actually got a long module number. Don't know whether it still runs, challenging behaviour. Don't answer that. What I wanted to do was to pick out some of those messages that we talked about. So this is about the work that we were doing that was focusing on understanding challenging behaviour and kind of thinking about how we might check this understanding out. So viewing the behaviour as, in some instances, being about young people expressing feelings. Yes, you have a right to express a feeling, quite often a feeling being about anxiety, unpredictable, uncertain events. Well, kind of what do you do? Well, what we all do is that we show, we might show aggressive behaviour, we might show behaviour that is kind of rocking, moving within ourselves. Other types of communicating, I want, I don't want, or indeed talk to me. Yeah, don't just ignore me. I need attention. Well, why not? So thinking about ways in which we might verify whether in fact those communicative functions were occurring. So looking at making contrasts between settings in which children showed high rates of difficult behaviour compared to low rates of difficult behaviour, and thinking about what that told us in terms of whether it was communicative or not. there's some interesting research. I should mimic Jean here. There's some interesting research around that about people introducing types of communication to replace the behaviour. So, for example, using switches that will tell people, I want, don't want, stop, or even tell the staff, talk to me, that are quite influential in terms of reducing behaviour. Thinking about whether the behaviour is about young people, youngsters, needing the need for control. If you're regimented through a whole set of activities, actually, and you don't have very much free time, then maybe the behaviour is about that young person trying to exert control over an environment that isn't giving them enough space for that. And again, researchers looked at the impact for some young people of introducing choice, so that in fact they have some control over the tasks they do, the order in which they do them, who they do them with, the kinds of materials, the things that are interesting. Two more. Being bored. I mean, this comes back to motivation and also to meaningfulness. It's activities that are scheduled to last much longer than somebody's attention span, rather like the 5 to 8 slot, you know, that actually at some point in time that particular individual has had enough. Yeah? So thinking about the balance of the day, whether in fact they're very similar types of activities and all difficult that somebody's being asked to do, whether there's opportunities to move around to do something different. And then lastly, just off the list of things that I've picked out, actually viewing challenging behaviour in terms of whether what it is that's within that behaviour that actually maybe identifies what's a particular interest or approach that the child likes. So there's some research that's looked at the ways in which some behaviours are in fact self-stimulatory, and they indicate that actually that person is particularly interested in visual stimulation or in kinesthetic stimulation, and then using that that understanding, that meaning, to think, right, well, what sorts of activities might we introduce that provides, that meets that same need, that reduces the need to engage in challenging behaviour. Oh, it's because I keep doing the wrong one.
Hang on.
Oh, crash the system, I'm back. Am I not standing in the right place? Thank you. You knew why you were sitting there.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of drawing together some messages here. Firstly, about making time to stand in the shoes of the learner, so gaining a viewpoint and thinking, as other people have said, about the meaningfulness of the activity from their perspective. Yeah, so standing in the learner's shoes and looking out through at their experiences. One of the things that Penny taught me is 2 is always better than 1. And that the importance of talking with others, those that provide some support, some mutual support that allow you to talk and that listen to you, but also that challenge you. They don't necessarily think, oh yeah, everything you say is great, you know, I'll just nod and she'll go away. Actually having somebody there, and you know, Penny and I did disagree about things. You know, it was great to have somebody to talk and share opposite viewpoints with. And then, of course, the opportunity, not just for problem solving and young people, but for carrying it out yourself, that kind of coming together, creating forums in which you can jointly solve problems, so that staff don't see themselves as being on their own, but actually there's a forum for sharing together. So that's my message.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brilliant.